All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're not just reading an ancient letter, we're going on a cinematic journey, verse by verse, through 1 Thessalonians chapter 2. We're going to uncover this incredible story about what real, genuine, trustworthy influence actually looks like. So, where does this story begin? The first part is all about the messenger. Paul basically opens up his heart and shows us the playbook for his mission. It's all about integrity, what drove them, and how they operated.
Okay, verse 1. Paul kicks things off by saying their visit wasn't in vain. What's that mean? It means it wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't empty. No, it had a real, tangible impact. I want you to picture a single seed being dropped into rich soil, and then you see it sprout and grow into this strong, healthy plant. That's what he's saying. Their work took root. Now, check out verse 2. This gives us the backstory, and it is intense. He reminds them, hey, right before we got to you, we were literally beaten down and publicly humiliated in the last town. But did they hide? Did they quit? Nope. They showed up bold. Just imagine a boxer, completely bruised and battered, but he gets right back up and steps into the ring again. That's the kind of courage he's talking about. Verse 3 gets right to the source of their message. He's making it crystal clear. It wasn't a mistake, it wasn't driven by some shady motive, and it definitely wasn't a trick. The image that comes to mind is a mountain spring, with a stream of perfectly clear water flowing from it. It's pure, it's untainted, and you know you can trust it. And that leads us to verse 4, which answers a huge question. Who were they trying to impress? Paul says it wasn't the crowd. Their one and only audience was God. They felt like they'd been entrusted with something precious, so their only goal was to please the one who gave it to them. It's like a master craftsman looking over his work, not for how flashy it is, but for its deep inner quality and strength. And he just keeps going in verse 5. He's saying, you guys were there. You know we never use slick, flattering words to get something out of you. And he says they never use their message as a cloak, like a disguise for greed. Picture this, a shadowy figure holding up a beautiful, smiling mask for everyone to see, but behind his back, he's just grabbing a fistful of coins. Paul is saying that absolutely was not us. Then you get to verse 6, and this is about power, right? As apostles, they had status. They could have thrown their weight around, made demands, and sought applause. But they didn't. Think of someone on a big stage, deliberately walking out of the spotlight and into the quiet wings to just be with a small group of people. That was their approach. Okay, get ready for a total shift in verse 7. After all that talk about what they weren't, deceptive, greedy, fame-seeking, Paul flips the script to tell us what they were. And the image he uses is just incredibly powerful. He says they were gentle, just as a nursing mother cherishes her own children. Wow, that's a picture of tender, protective, completely selfless care. Verse 8 takes that tenderness to a whole new level. This wasn't just a speaking tour for them. It was deeply personal. They didn't just share a message, they shared their lives. Imagine someone holding out their hands. In one hand, they're offering you a loaf of bread, that's the message, but in the other, a warm light is glowing from their own chest. That's their very life. That's what they were offering. All right, verse 9. Paul brings up something really practical here, their work ethic. He reminds them that they worked night and day, probably making tents so they wouldn't have to ask for a dime. They didn't want to be a financial burden on anyone. Just picture a craftsman hunched over his work late into the night, the only light coming from a single lamp, totally focused. Now this is interesting. In verse 10, he basically calls witnesses to the stand. Witness number 1, the people themselves. Witness number 2, God. And what's the testimony about? Their character. He says they lived devoutly, justly, and blamelessly. Their lives were like a plumb line, that simple tool a builder uses to make sure a wall is perfectly straight and true. That was their integrity. Remember that incredible nursing mother image from before? Well, in verse 11, Paul switches metaphors. Now he says they were like a father to them, encouraging, comforting, and giving them guidance. Think of a dad with his arm around his kid's shoulder, pointing out toward the horizon, showing them the way to go. So, what was the whole point of that motherly care and that fatherly direction? Verse 12 pulls it all together. The goal was to inspire them to live in a way that measured up to the incredible invitation they'd received from God. It's the image of a person walking, head held high, up a path toward a magnificent, glowing gate, God's kingdom. All right, so the focus shifts now. The camera pans from the messenger to the audience. We're about to see how this message actually landed and the powerful effect it had. Verse 13, and you can just feel the gratitude pouring out of Paul. He's so thankful because when the people heard their message, they didn't just say, "Oh, that's a nice opinion." They recognized it for what it was, the actual word of God. It's like getting a letter in the mail sealed with a king's royal crest. You don't treat it like junk mail. You open it knowing its contents could change your life. And how do they know the word was really working? Verse 14 gives us the proof. They started to look and act like believers in other places, right down to the struggles they faced. They got pushback from their own neighbors and countrymen, which connected to believers hundreds of miles away in Judea. It's like two separate groups of people in totally different locations finding themselves weathering the exact same storm. Then in verse 15, Paul zooms out and shows them this is part of a long, tragic pattern. This kind of rejection wasn't new. He connects it to the same spirit that pushed back against the ancient prophets and even against Jesus himself. You can almost see a historical timeline with these messengers of God, one after another, being rejected by hostile crowds. And what was the goal of this opposition? Verse 16 is blunt. It was to stop the message of salvation from reaching people. But Paul frames it as a hopeless cause that comes with serious consequences. It's like watching someone frantically trying to slam a heavy door shut, but there's this incredibly powerful light that just keeps pouring through all the cracks. You can't stop it. Okay, now we're at the final section of the chapter, and this is really the emotional core of the whole letter, where Paul just lays bare how deeply he cares for these people. You can really feel the heartache in verse 17. He talks about being taken away from them. It's a harsh phrase, but he's quick to add it was only in presence, not in heart. Imagine a map, and there are these two glowing dots, one for Paul and one for the city. Even though they're far apart, there's this bright, unbreakable line of light connecting them. And that longing to be with them wasn't just a vague wish. Look at verse 18. He says they wanted to come back time and again, but something kept blocking the way. He identifies it as an obstacle from Satan. Picture someone trying to run full speed towards a destination they love, but this shadowy, invisible wall just keeps popping up in front of them, stopping them in their tracks. It's so frustrating.
So what's the point of all this struggle, all this work? Verse 19 asks the big question. What's their reward, their trophy, their victory crown at the finish line? He says it's not gold, it's not fame, it's them, the people. Imagine an athlete standing on a winner's podium, but instead of getting a gold medal placed around their neck, they're handed a beautiful living portrait of all the joyful faces of the people they helped.
And then, verse 20, it's the perfect, simple, powerful climax to everything he's been building. He just says it. For you are our glory and joy. That's the mission statement. Success wasn't about the size of the crowd or their reputation. It was about people. It's that look of immense pride and happiness on a mentor's face as they gaze out at a community that is thriving because of their care. So as we wrap this up, this whole story of courage and integrity and deep, deep care kind of leaves us with a question, doesn't it? Paul's ultimate prize, his motivation for everything, was the people he poured his life into, which makes you stop and think. In your own life, with your own work, in your relationships, who is your glory and joy?